The knock on the workshop door came just as the autumn sun began to disappear behind the tall maple trees. I wiped the sawdust from my hands, expecting another customer looking for handmade furniture. Instead, the moment I opened the door, my entire world froze. Standing there was the one person I had spent 8 years trying to forget. Sarah looked older, tired, and somehow even more beautiful than the last time I had seen her. But it wasn't her face that stole the air from my lungs. It was the little girl standing quietly beside her, holding her hand with innocent trust. In that instant, every painful memory I had buried came rushing back, and I realized life wasn't finished rewriting my story. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and the power of second chances, please take a moment to like this video. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that touch the heart. My name is Nathan Carter, and I lived in the quiet town of Asheville, North Carolina. Years earlier, Sarah and I had built what we thought would be the perfect life together. We dreamed about children, bought an old farmhouse, and imagined growing old on the front porch watching sunsets. But dreams can disappear faster than anyone expects. After years of trying unsuccessfully to have children, our marriage slowly cracked under the weight of disappointment. Endless doctor's appointments, silent dinners, and nights filled with tears eventually became too much. Neither of us cheated. Neither of us stopped loving the other completely. We simply stopped knowing how to carry the pain together. One rainy afternoon, she packed a few boxes, whispered goodbye, and walked away. I signed the divorce papers without looking back, because I believed that was the only way either of us could survive. The years that followed were lonely. I buried myself in woodworking, spending long hours turning rough pieces of oak and walnut into beautiful furniture. My hands stayed busy, but my heart never truly healed. Friends encouraged me to date again, yet every conversation felt empty. The farmhouse echoed with silence every evening, reminding me that some losses leave permanent marks, no matter how much time passes. Now Sarah stood in front of me again, and beside her was a little girl with bright hazel eyes and long brown hair tied into a loose braid. She looked no older than 6. The child clutched a drawing of a bluebird, carefully colored with crayons, while looking around my workshop with quiet curiosity. For a brief, terrifying second, my mind raced toward impossible conclusions. Had Sarah moved on? Was this her daughter? Why had she come back after all these years? Sarah's eyes filled with tears before she finally explained everything. A few years after our divorce, she had moved to Tennessee to start over. There she volunteered at a children's hospital while trying to rebuild her life. One winter evening, a terrible highway accident left a little girl named Grace without parents or close relatives willing to care for her. Sarah had spent months visiting the child during recovery, reading bedtime stories, bringing coloring books, and simply being there whenever nightmares stole the little girl's sleep. What began as compassion slowly became family. Eventually, Sarah adopted Grace. Listening to her story stirred emotions I couldn't explain. I had spent years believing fate had stolen our chance to become parents. Yet here she stood with a child whose smile carried hope instead of heartbreak. But Sarah hadn't returned to reopen old wounds. She had come because Grace had developed an extraordinary love for birds and woodworking. After seeing pictures Sarah still kept from our old life, she remembered the birdhouses I used to build every spring, and wondered if I could teach Grace how to make one herself. At first, every weekend lesson felt awkward. Sarah stayed nearby, while Grace eagerly learned how to sand rough wood, carefully hammer tiny nails, and paint colorful little homes for bluebirds and cardinals. The workshop that had once echoed only with loneliness slowly filled with laughter again. Grace asked endless questions about trees, birds, and why every piece of wood smelled different. Her excitement reminded me how beautiful simple things could be when seen through a child's eyes. As weeks turned into months, something unexpected happened. The bitterness I had carried for nearly a decade quietly disappeared. I stopped remembering Sarah as the woman who had left me and started seeing the incredible person who had rescued a frightened child from a lifetime of loneliness. She, in turn, saw that I was no longer hiding behind grief. We never spoke much about the divorce, because we no longer needed to. Time had answered the questions that arguments never could. One chilly December afternoon, Grace asked if we could build one giant birdhouse together, instead of several small ones. She wanted to donate it to the children's hospital where Sarah had first met her, so every child looking out the recovery windows could watch birds gathering outside. We spent 3 weeks designing it. Nurses, volunteers, and even local businesses donated paint, wood, and supplies. When the birdhouse was finally installed beneath a large oak tree outside the hospital, dozens of children pressed against the windows, smiling as curious birds, quickly began exploring their colorful new home. That moment changed all of us. The local newspaper featured the story, calling it the birdhouse of second chances. Donations poured in to build more birdhouses for parks, schools, and hospitals across western North Carolina. Volunteers joined us every Saturday. Families facing loss found comfort while working together. Children discovered confidence by creating something beautiful with their own hands. What had started as one unexpected knock on my workshop door became a movement that united an entire community. One evening, after everyone had gone home, I stood beside Sarah watching dozens of birds settling into the wooden homes we had built together. The silence between us no longer felt painful. It felt peaceful. We both understood something that had taken years to learn. Sometimes love doesn't return looking the way we expect. Sometimes it comes back carrying healing instead of answers, hope instead of regret, and a little girl's hand instead of old promises. Grace never replaced the family we lost because she created an entirely new one. She taught us that broken hearts can still become safe places for others. She reminded us that parenthood isn't always about biology. It's about showing up, staying faithful, and choosing love every single day. The farmhouse, that once echoed with loneliness, gradually became full of life again. Birdhouses covered the porch. Children's drawings decorated the workshop walls. Weekend volunteers filled the yard with laughter. Every sunrise felt like proof that even the darkest chapters can lead to the brightest endings when people refuse to stop believing in compassion. If this story has touched your heart in any way, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, subscribe to the channel, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need hope today. Special request: before this story ends, please comment "Second chances still exist" if you believe love, forgiveness, and kindness can change someone's life forever. As I locked the workshop door that evening, I realized something I never thought possible. The greatest miracle wasn't that Sarah had returned after all those years. The miracle was that life had given all three of us another opportunity to become the family we never imagined we could be. Sometimes the happiest endings aren't the ones we planned from the beginning. They're the ones that quietly arrive after we've stopped expecting them, carrying hope by the hand and reminding us that no heart is ever too broken to love again.